to our session, Turning Digital Tools into Real Impact. Hi, I'm Emily Jarvis, and I'm the Senior Manager for Events here at GovLoop. And today I have the added pleasure of also being your moderator. So thanks so much for joining me. And a special thank you to our sponsors at Pluralsight, Carasoft, Ninja One, and Uber for Business for helping us put on this session today. So let's get right to it, because equipping teams with the right tools quickly reduces friction, streamlines tasks, and boosts productivity. But with so many options, it's hard to know which will truly make an impact. So today, our experts are going to share ways technology can help government teams collaborate better, stay organized, and even get to work, all while focused on that mission critical component. But before we get to all of that, we do have some housekeeping items to go over. First things first, we've got some great resources available for you on the console under that resources button along the bottom panel of your screen. That's also, of course, where you can learn a little bit more about our speakers, so make sure you check that out. If you need access to that closed captioning feature, just look for that show captions icon along the bottom right-hand side of the panel. That's where you'll find that added accessibility. Now, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but if you do, send us a message through that Q&A tab, and my colleague will get you all sorted out. And in that same portal, you can ask our experts questions, so don't you dare be shy. Put your questions in early and often. You can also chat with your fellow attendees using that chat button, and we want to hear what you're saying. Where are you logging in from? I'm in Rockville, Maryland. Let me know where you're logging in from. Finally, we are recording this training, so check your inboxes tomorrow, because we'll email you a link so you can watch the entire session on demand. All right, with all of that out of the way, let me introduce you to our speakers. Joining us, we have Raven Manuel, who's a senior application developer, architect, DevOps engineer at the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of African American History and Culture. We also have Joni Newhart, who is the Associate Administrator of Acquisition Workforce Programs in the Office of Management and Budget. Nick Brown, Senior Program Manager for Uber for Business. Tony Holmes, Practice Lead Solutions Architect for Public Sector at Pluralsight. And Egan Randier, who is the Senior Vice President for Federal and Enterprise Growth at Ninja One. Thank you all so much for being here today. And to better understand each of our speakers' perspectives on the tools that transform how government works, me and my colleagues sat down for one-on-one interviews with our speakers. Here are those conversations. Here to talk about the tools and processes for transformation is Joni Newhart. She is the Associate Administrator for Acquisition Workforce Programs in the Office of Management and Budget. Joni, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
Yeah, so from what I understand, there is a big transformation going on in the acquisition world, and one that could maybe help acquisition professionals focus on making procurement faster, simpler, more mission focused, all things that obviously agencies are working towards. Tell me a little bit about what you all are working on and how this will help government employees get their jobs done a little more efficiently.
Sure, Emily. So the Federal Acquisition Regulation was established over 4 decades ago. And in that time, you can imagine they've been layered more regulations, more rules, more this, more that. So it turned out to be this huge 2,000-page document when it was in paper form. And it's a lot to keep track of. A year ago, we got a new administrator in the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, Dr. Kevin Rhodes, and he started us all on this path of get out all of the non-statutory stuff in the FAR. So we call it the revolutionary FAR overhaul, and it is truly revolutionary. So it's been skinnied way down, and contracting professionals now have a lot more judgment, a lot more discretion. They can tailor everything to the particular procurement instead of having this like checklist every procurement you have to do this all the way down the checklist. And it didn't make sense for a lot of procurement. So let's tailor it to what you need to make the best mission-driven decision for this procurement. And that is going to help people immeasurably. It's quite the process. We have NASA involved, GSA, Department of War, all on the FAR Council, and they've been driving this with Dr. Rhodes at the lead.
That's wonderful. So I think sometimes what folks maybe overlook is the cultural impact of these changes, right? People are like, oh, let's just bring in a new tool or a new technology and it's going to change the way people work. And while that may perhaps work in some instances, most of the time you do, as an organization, need to go through a pretty robust culture change effort in order to really see some of these changes have impacts. And what you've talked about here sounds like what that is. This is a kind of massive undertaking from kind of the culture side of things, and how you get people to think about acquisitions and about how they go about them. So how are you going about initiating this initiative? Initiating an initiative, but how are you going about kind of getting this initiative off the ground?
Well, first off, I want to give a shout out to my colleagues at OMB, GSA, everywhere in the agencies for coming on this journey with us. It's a lot to say. The Federal Acquisition Institute is the training arm of the civilian agency acquisition folks, and the War U is the training arm of the military and the DoD acquisition professionals. So think of all of us in this together, trying to change this culture. So from my end of it, I've been going and talking to the senior procurement executives at each of the large agencies to talk about, what their workforce is feeling, what they might need help with, how they plan to approach this. And that's really key, because the workforce itself, you can imagine, they've lost some of their colleagues in the last year, and they've had leadership changes. And honestly, many agencies are undergoing reorganizations. So you layer all of these things on the contracting and the procurement folks, and it's a lot. So that's why this is a all of government effort to change this culture. So we're attacking different levels at the agency. So the senior procurement folks, there's another level called heads of contracting activities or bureau chiefs. Then we're also thinking about the supervisors and managers. I think those are probably the most impactful for the frontline folks, because they have their closest proximity to them, and they actually can either foster this new process, the new innovation, or they can say, oh, no, we've always done it this way. So we need to get to them. And then, of course, the frontline folks are the most important, because they're the ones that have to, they're risk averse. This community's risk averse and rule bound. We need them to be flexible and innovative and just have a different mindset about things. So how are we actually reaching them? I'm looking at this chart right now. It's called the RFO, Revolutionary FAR Overhaul Learning Cycle. And this chart can be found at www.fai.gov. And what's important about this chart, it lays out this cycle from learning and awareness and exposure, then knowledge, understanding, and then application. So you learn about it, you learn more about it in depth, then you actually apply it, and then you learn from that and feed it back into the cycle again. I learned this, so now we have this new understanding. And that's how we're all kind of looking at this culture change. So there are things in this chart, all the resources I'm going to talk about and more are on this chart. So if you have some time, go find this chart at fai.gov. It's on the front page. You'd have to scroll down just a little bit. But there's things like a class on navigating the new FAR framework. So now, instead of just the FAR, we have a practitioner's guide, and we have a category management buying guide. So how do you make sense of all that? Where do you go look? So that class teaches you that. We have HIT training, high intensity training for the frontline workforce on what this means. Like, you read the words, but you're like, does that really mean that for me? This is what it means. This is how my friend Susie's doing it. And it's, discussion about all things, what's happening, how you do it. And we have a office hours, so people can just come with their questions or their problems or their challenges and talk to really smart people in the know that can help them figure it out. We have office hours for supervisors and managers. So we want to understand what their challenges are, and then we can figure out how best to address it and put it at scale. We have train the trainer trainings because we require virtual instructor-led for this high-intensity training because of the content, it just doesn't really lend itself to like a webinar or something. So in order to scale it, we need train the trainer. So we're going to go out into agencies and teach them how to train this class. So there is a tremendous amount going on to help change this culture. And I've got to tell you, it's been really fun and interesting. I'm toward the end of my career, but this whole effort has kind of re-energized me. It's a once in a career opportunity to mold acquisition into how I wish it was when I was a contracting officer. So it's fun to watch and it's fun to be a part of.
That's really cool. And it's always nice to find a new passion project along the way. It definitely helps the getting up and going to work of it all.
Yes.
I want to drill down specifically because obviously you're in a unique position being within OMB's office, but you've mentioned, a bunch of different agencies over this conversation so far. What is the role that these individual agencies, the NASAs, the GSAs, the Department of War, Department of Justice, what are they going to be playing as a role in this initiative?
So I think they have the very important role of actually changing the culture. Like at my level, we can try, but we need people that are in that same agency to change the agency culture. And so that's why we're kind of looking at all the different levels. And the agencies are doing a lot of really creative things. Some are doing like mini sessions. One calls it turbo talks, another one impact sessions, just about little pieces of the FAR and what this piece means to you when you're doing a procurement. So that's a really good idea. Others have established liaisons between the procurement shop and the program office. So the program office develops the requirements and the liaison helps talk both of those languages to bring this group together. Others are establishing or using existing innovation labs to help the frontline workforce with pilots and testing and ideas on what to do with procurement. So the efforts are large and impressive. And so part of my job is finding out what's going on, which isn't always easy because it's at the agency, I'm not there, but then sharing them across the agency so that they know, oh, this agency's trying this, they're getting good results. Like, let's try that too. So that's really agencies are the ones driving the actual culture change. We're just here to help. We're always here to help.
Yeah. So the theme of this session is, empowering the workforce and really turning whether it's tooling or policies into a real impact. And so I got to ask, what does success look like for this? How do you see perhaps employees or contractors or both of them kind of being impacted by some of these changes?
Well, I think a key piece of this too is that so the FAR is changing to be more streamlined and to be skinnier. Each agency has like a supplement. Most agencies have supplements to the FAR. So we're asking them to also streamline. We're asking them to look at their processes so that they can match up with the new FAR flexibilities and discretion. So what does success look like? That is such a great question. So in this new world, contracting professionals can make quicker and better decisions using their discretion and judgment and having data that can help them make that best decision. They can spend more time on strategy instead of paperwork. For example, we used to have these things, acquisition plans that were very checklisty, like you have to have this in your plan. Now we're allowing oral acquisition plans that can be tailored to the procurement. That's radical because now you can truly focus on what is the best way to get what I'm buying, what is the very best strategy. So these contracting folks can collaborate with their program managers and have requirements that are clearer and more outcome based. They can be done more quickly, deliver capability quicker. There's a lot of collaboration here, a lot of industry engagement. We really have to rely on industry because guess what? They're the ones that know the answer to our problems. So we need to talk with them. The entire team is going to focus on what the best solution is and what the best approach is, with a focus on commercial. Big focus on commercial, because like the commercial, we don't need to build everything ourselves. The commercial world has it. We should just buy that. So less time is spent on templates and checklists, more time on market research, industry engagement, and managing the risks. So it's going to take some time to realize this vision, but I really like it. And I got to tell you, I think we're well on our way.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Joni. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really enjoyed it.
Here to talk about the tools and strategies that are helping government transform is Raven Manuel, who is the principal application developer and architect. She's also a DevOps engineer for the Smithsonian Institute's Museum of African American History and Culture. Raven, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, I enjoy it. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Of course. So, talk to me a little bit, because when we're talking about something as large as, tools that can transform the way government works, sometimes we think large scale. What I want us to focus on here are kind of the day-to-day realities of government work, and where do you see some of the opportunities for tooling of whatever variety to kind of come in and remove maybe some friction or help out teams to be a little bit more productive?
Absolutely. As I told you before, I actually deal with the unit itself. I'm a team of one. I'm the research and design, or research and development team, which is a great segue for me because I still get to make applications like prototypes. But recently, everything that I've been doing is around AI because I'm trying to get the unit ready for AI. I'm actually going to be doing some training at the tech levels for people in the IT department, and then at the staff level for people who just need to know how to use IT. I've been having fun with AI myself. It's been an amazing trip for me. So that's where, I mean, if we're going to call AI a tool, that's where the tool's going to be. And because I've learned so much about how the AI thinks, how it thinks of me, I've actually developed a framework, two frameworks. One's a trademark and one's a copyright. That is how in depth that is. But once you understand how the prompts work, how everything works, and it can become a tool. I've had to step back from my evangelism of AI because there are the way AI helps, it doesn't actually help because it's very reactive. So that's the tool that very slowly, I know we're already using it. The secretary of the Smithsonian has already given guidance. I've developed governance. Like last week, I just gave my supervisor this governance document, which was like, what is the federal government doing? What is the state doing? Like, it was really ridiculous. But there's a lot to it. But I want as a tool, it's going to work with every department, right? Depending on like what their needs are, which is why I'm going to do at a staff level. And usually it's going to start out generic about how to do prompt engineering. And then I'll do it by smaller groups, figure out what their problem is.
Gotcha. And so with that in mind, and obviously here in this context, we're talking about AI, and I feel like there's a new AI implementation every minute, it
Right.
seems like, and that these technologies are popping up as additive measures on technologies in a lot of ways that we already have. So, with so many new AI technologies popping up, how do you, and I'm talking in a personal
Yeah.
capacity here, how do you decide which ones are worth exploring versus which ones aren't really just that noise that's in the background taking up space?
Are you talking, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you talking about the agents like Gemini and Claude, or are you talking about the AI, AI generators? Because I'm not sure which levels you're talking. I use
You
them
could
all.
go in either direction, whichever you
Okay.
prefer.
I recently figured out I would stick to one, and Gemini was my buddy, and until we had a disagreement, and it was all my fault because I just didn't understand like what I was doing with it. I'm neurodivergent. I've got like ADD, and you could probably already do that from day one since you met me. But my brain also works really fast. So there sometimes I have problems with finding words because my brain has already moved on and I didn't find the word that I needed. So I use a lot of analogies. I use like if something went really well, I'll say it's creamy as oat milk. And that's problematic for the way that the AIs have been taught. Their training data is based off of pattern matching. So they pattern match. And so if the AI picked up oat milk and it picked up creamy, it will skip everything else that's in my prompt because it thinks that that's what I want to talk about, and it will give me the wrong answers. This is a problem. I don't know if you've actually, no, you probably don't talk about oat milk when you're trying to do something else. So for me, I actually have, this is what one of my frameworks is. It's kind of teaching the AI how to deal with neurodivergent users because the AIs have been trained on data that's for neurotypical users. And even I don't know who's ML is going to be watching this, but the training philosophy is reactive. So let's say that you wanted to make an agenda or something, right? And you went into the AI, and this is all of them. They all do this. You go into the AI and you're like, I need to do an agenda for X, Y, and Z. And it would read your prompt, but then what would happen is it takes the user and then it makes the user a passive participant, and the AI actually takes over because it works off of an assumption that the pattern that it matched was what you were looking for, and it rather ask for forgiveness than ask for more details. And that's because they've been trained and they've been weighted that users don't mind going back and changing it, and they are focused. Their strategy is to produce first, ask second. They don't ask, this is so totally ridiculous. The AI doesn't ask the user because they don't want the user to think that they're not smart. Serious business. So that's what happens. I have actually had to train the AI. I first give it a little snippet of the assessment from a neuropsychologist that tells how my brain works and that my brain is very fast so that the AI understands why I'm about to tell it not to do what it can't do for me. And I call it provisioning. And so it'll do that. It'll get to know me. And this doesn't just work on neurodivergent. I think that you would enjoy it. It'll be on anybody because once I call it the AI learns who you are, once it learns who you are, it actually can, it does inference and it does nuances. So for me, that's what's really important. I need the AI to be able to not say that I'm talking about oat milk, but to be able to go in and say, oh, she's talking about this, which is why that was my motivation to train. Believe it or not, nobody in the industry is actually nobody is doing that. And I'm like, what is going to happen here? And so I have this strategy where it's called provisioning, and I do calibration where the AI learns your brain and how that works and just things like that. And that would be for neurodivergent people. And then I have something called orientation. Orientation, when I tell the AI, that's like orienting them to a neurodivergent person. because they are a neurotypical. You have to fight, I call it aftermarket machine learning, because I'm trying to change the way the AI behaves aftermarket. So I've done it with Claude. Claude is awesome. So if you want to work with an AI that's more uh, understands who you are without any type of training in your vibe, that would be Claude. And Gemini is very imaginative. So I use Gemini for innovation. And these are the things I'm actually going to train staff on when I teach. And I'm teaching, what am I teaching? Multimedia at Nova. What I'm having them do is they have this project that's very way out there. I'm giving them, because it's multimedia, I'm making them use all of these AI text to image generator. They have to make a comic strip, so they need to use the AI comic maker. So there's tools all over the place, and you just pick the one that's good for you. Claude's not good at making images, but it can make charts. I don't use Claude Code, not yet anyway. But the problem, and this is going back to governance, is that a lot of the thing about governance out there and security has to do where the data comes from. All of the stuff I'm telling you, it just hit me and I did not know. The AI gets all of its data by scraping everything. You make a blog post, and if it's publicly available, it's going to scrape it. It doesn't do it. Some data management source does this, but that's where it gets all its information from the web. And so imagine you're asking for something and somebody crazy on social media has put something out there, and the AI is picking that up, which is why it says the AI can be wrong, because it can. This thing called hallucination, it doesn't hallucinate, it makes assumptions, and based off its assumptions, it will give you phrasing that there's a high probability that you want it in there. So even if you didn't, like I had a checklist and I was like, Claude, I don't remember giving you this as on the checklist. Why do you have it there? Oh, I think I made it up. Like it'll tell you made it up. Gemini and Claude both, they joke with me. So these are things that as tools, they're just going to be unique for people. It's an opportunity, and it can be all around. It's just that now that I'm working with it a little bit and I understand the pattern matching, it's not as easy as some people think it's going to be. Sorry, that was really long-winded.
No, you're great. You're great. Okay, so I have two more quick questions for you. And the first is, and I think you were just alluding to this a little bit, but government employees are stretched thin, whether it is smaller offices and teams than there used to be, or kind of just the realities of the scope of their work has shifted and they've got more on their plate. Government employees have a lot going on. So what kinds of tools tend to help the most when people are trying to do that phrase that I absolutely hate, that is seeming more relevant now than ever, do more with less? What do you think there?
AI, the tools that we have, let's say HR, finance, they have the same, their tools don't change, right? They have to do the finance system, which I can't think of what that's called right now. And then HR has its own system. Those systems didn't change. Nothing about them changed. The tools that were used, maybe they were using Smartsheet, maybe they were using an Excel spreadsheet, maybe they were using a custom form, right? Those have not changed. The only thing that changes is what is out there as far as an application. I use Calendly, right, for office hours. That's a tool that I use to manage for office hours. That hasn't changed either. Like you said, you have 15 hours of work to get done in 8 hours. You're only one person. You only have a set of hands. You yourself can only work with one application at that same time. It's not about tools. It's about the person. The person actually has to change, because nothing that is out there, the systems that they use, they're not changing. So you have to find tools to help you. For instance, for putting things, the web dev team, when they put things online, the in WCAG, are you familiar with accessibility? The WCAG, which is the accessibility, and for images, it kind of changed. You have to put an image description there now. You can't just put the name of the thing. You have to kind of describe it. There's an AI image to text generator. That's a tool. And so you just give it the image, it will spit out the text and describe it in a way that meets AAA for WCAG. So that goes in there. I'm doing an API that's going to leverage that particular thing. So we have APIs. So that's what's going to change, is for people like me, developers like me, trying to find a way for data to be more accessible. But the tools that our staff uses, none of the thing there has changed. The only thing is using AI, the right agent to agent, meaning that it doesn't matter if it's chat GPT or some AI generator for a script or whatever. Those are out there. They have all these little utilities. So the mindset, like how you were thinking, that mindset, that's not the mindset anymore, because you've got this one technology that has wrapped it all up into one, right? Because the systems that you have to work with for enterprise, nothing has changed for them. And that's why AI is like a time saver. I am sort of an evangelist, but after last week, I'm like, kind of like, with caution, it's got a caution tape. You really have to understand how the AI kind of works in order to get it to work for you. But that's the mindset change that has to happen in the industry, that there aren't any tools anymore. There's one tool that's versatile, that can do anything if you understand how to use it.
Gotcha. All right, final question for you then.
Okay.
As AI solutions are coming into play and individuals are deploying them themselves a little bit more, whether it's for time savings or just efficiency overall,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways. What are some practical ways that agencies can tell whether it's actually improving their workflows or employee experience? Are there metrics that you'd look at to see if any of these improvements are actually working?
I'm gonna take this from a person, because I don't know about other staff. I'll take it from me. Um, I don't know if you have performance evaluations, but we have performance evaluation. I have a mid-year and I have an end of year. And I have to tell my supervisor how I spent my time. Um, I have to write up executive summaries. I have to write up all my research. I have to write up so much stuff that my EPMS, my performance evaluation for the accomplishments, was one line, and the supporting documents was kind of thin because I couldn't do it all at the same time. I inundated my supervisor last year at the end of the year, because I gave the AI like this. If I give the AI GovLoop and I put in, this is what we talked about, it will look at my performance evaluation and pull out what questions or what was it about, and then say that this is what I talked about. So this is what I did for this. And so my performance evaluation was just like phenomenal as far as I was concerned. It totally did that. And then the supporting documentation, I usually was able to get 2 out there. I gave him the summary. I gave him like technical documents. I gave him like 6 different documents, because I was able to get the AI to help me to do all those documents. And if anybody else is doing that just for a performance evaluation, that in itself, you're able to tell your supervisor, this is what I did and this is why it's important, instead of saying, I talked at GovLoop and this is what it was about. Like, instead of doing that. So, and this, it makes you more valued, right? And that's from an individual perspective. But I'm pretty sure that if it was the exhibit team, the curators or the historian, and they're working on a exhibit, that using AI will actually help bring it together, because now the curator or the historian, or not the historian, sorry, the educator, can actually take the plans, because somebody else is designing it, can actually take that design, have the AI look at the design, and then say, I want to teach, I'll just pull one, World War One, we returned fighting. I want to teach about these luminaries. So where would be the best way to actually get people to walk through that? That's what I mean. It's like now I don't need to be on that team to build. I can just bring it in, and that will make them more efficient, because then the meetings get like you have to make less. So can it go here? Can it go here? Because somebody can give like the concept of what they were thinking, educator. And then it's like, this is what I was doing. I don't see how. The only thing is you just need to know how to use a tool. That's pretty much it. I don't even use DevOps tools anymore.
Wow.
You know.
Wow. All right. Well, I think a
Okay.
title change is going to be in your future. I really appreciate your time today,
You're
though.
welcome.
It's a wonderful perspective to add. In the last 2 years, and in the years before that, there's been a tremendous focus on finding tools that actually help government employees work more efficiently. But figuring out which ones work best is difficult. Here to sort through the noise is Ninja One's Egan Reindeer, who I asked what type of tools are resonating with their employees. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think we've seen sort of this remarkable increase in sort of this new breed of tooling that really is designed around empowering the workforce. And that can come in a lot of different flavors. In some cases, we'll see that, and I'm going to use some terminology that's used very broadly. In other words, like digital user experience and co-work technologies and things like that. Those can be used to describe very, very different technologies, right? So what I don't want to do is pigeonhole this into particular vendor product speak, but more high-level concepts. So some of the things that I've seen that have been very positive in terms of improving the end user, right? The person who's got a job to do, improving their ability to do that job, have been in those areas where we say, look, I'll speak personally, right? I am absolutely inundated with information every single day, right? Hundreds of emails, probably. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say 500, 800 Slack messages a day, something like that. Text messages, phone calls, Zooms, all of the different things that I have to do that are not necessarily the core job that I need to perform, right? They're important and they need to be dealt with, but like I actually have work that I need to be getting done as well. And at some point it becomes a bit overwhelming, and that also puts an incredibly high load on the technologies that I rely upon, right? So in other words, if anything takes me longer than it needs to, if I need to respond to a message and that requires me to, my SSO kicks in and I have to relog into my SSO and it takes me, 10 steps to do that or whatever the case may be, and it doesn't work reliably, those are the sorts of things that get in the way of a human being productive, right? They're necessary. We need to have security in place. We need to have checks and balances and all of the things, all of the technologies. But we also need to make sure that they're relatively transparent to the end user. We have seen I think a really positive increase in the vendor community working very hard in that regard to make sure that the technology that they are fielding is not acting as a mechanism that slows down productivity. However, we also need to consider the fact that that doesn't always work right, and those technologies can conflict with each other. And so we need to have a really accurate, really good understanding of the performance level of the technology that we've given those end users to do their job. In other words, I need to have an active and ongoing understanding of is the computer or the mobile device or whatever it is that we've issued these end users, is it performing the way that we would expect? Is it healthy? It's yes, being patched and lowering the vulnerability attack surface and those sorts of things is very important. But so too is it properly resourced, right? Does it have, or is the end user constantly running into resource contention between these, 15 or 20 different applications that we've sort of forced on them for the right reasons? And it's that sort of real-time awareness, if you will, that is absolutely necessary to maintain end user productivity. But sort of what we talked about in the first question, that's been made harder, right? Like tremendously harder to keep tabs on, because a lot of the technologies that we put in place when everybody went to a distributed workforce sort of hindered getting that data back in a way that makes it useful. It's like, if I can get that data back in batches and I can tell you that, hey, 3 days ago you were experiencing problems, that's not very helpful, right? I need to be able to see, hey, this end user, in fact, I need to be able to see this end user is going to experience a problem if I don't intervene, right? I don't want the end user to be the one reporting that. I want the system to be the one reporting that. And that takes sort of a different way of thinking about things. A lot of the legacy tooling that is available to the government in order to take care of their end users is more reporting after the fact focused, as opposed to reporting before something happens and sort of being predictive in that regard. There is a lot of new technology in that space that makes that much easier for the government. There's a longer conversation to have there, I think, around how process and policy gets in the way of being able to adopt that, right? There is no magic button to fix that, but at least we're seeing that the technology is there and it's available.
Thanks so much, Egan. You really solidified for me how these tools can really help employees and agencies meet mission goals more effectively. Employees themselves are a tool in their toolbox for growth, and employees must develop working knowledges of domains that are adjacent to their core expertise. Consider the security engineer who learns about AI frameworks and then better protects the data that AI needs. Leaders must encourage and reward such curiosity and cross-skilling. And to understand just how valuable this tool is in development, my colleague Candace Thorson sat down with Pluralsight's Tony Holmes. Here's that conversation.
Let's talk about the ways they specifically help with cross-skilling right now. First, we have a huge array of courses, over 8,000 courses. I can't keep track anymore, that span every major technology domain, whether it's cloud, data security, ops, AI, software development. And the breadth that we offer in those courses is super important, because cross-skilling only works if people can actually move across domains without hitting a wall. So a cyber professional that wants to build fluency in cloud architecture or AI can do that in the same platform on demand. And it's not just that, it's also the ability to get hands-on in a safe way. So you don't have to have people messing around with your live environment. They can use the labs, they can use the sandboxes and just build that knowledge set without actually having to cause any risk within the environment. But it's not just that structured learning, it's also the just-in-time knowledge. If I'm a cyber guy and I need to do something in the cloud quickly and I don't have that knowledge, it's the ability to reach out to that huge course set, that huge knowledge set, and be able to say, I need to find the exact piece of information I need for the next 30 minutes to get this roadblock out of my way. And I think, that also adds to quickly broaden or deepen their understanding in the environments that they're trying to work in as well. So that's the first part. I think the second part is our role IQ and our skill IQ assessments, which are used to actually identify knowledge gaps. I guess people like to take assessments or like to think about what they think they know, but the skill IQ tool helps to highlight what people actually know and where the gaps are. And the really cool thing about finding gaps with people is you can immediately curate, and the platform does that. It curates learning and builds a learning path based exactly on those skill gaps. So you don't have to mess around learning and relearning stuff you already know. You're closing gaps as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So speed to skill is maximized because learning is not generic. And I think that's super important when we revisit what I spoke about a couple of questions ago, which is, we want people to make the most efficient use of the time that we give them to learn. So by removing all of the unnecessary learning effort, it helps with that. If you put both of those together, you've got exactly the right infrastructure for cross-skilling and creating that culture of learning that we've been talking about throughout our conversation. And I think, we need to give people the opportunity to explore areas wherever their curiosity takes them.
I have what may be the hardest question that I'm asking today. If you had to condense everything down of all the things we talked about, what 2 or 3 takeaways would you want to leave people with? It's a hard question.
I'm probably just going to recover the stuff that I covered, which is, in the first instance, we talked about not designing your workforce development around today's job descriptions. The speed that everything is changing is absolutely ridiculous right now. I spend a lot of time focused on AI in my job, and I have struggles keeping up with how quickly it's moving. It blows my mind. So train for the team you want, not for the team you have, as a tip of the hat to train, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. You want to train for the team you want, not for the team you have. You can't predict what you're going to need in 18 months. I don't think anybody can, to be real. We know there's going to be cloud. We know there's still going to be cyber issues, but beyond that, everything else is fair game. So you just need to build teams that are adaptable enough to meet it when it arrives. Again, the special operators that we spoke in the DoD, they can prepare for a mission, but they can't train for exactly what the mission's going to be like, because the situation on the ground changes, the environment they're working in changes. I think the second is take the time to honestly evaluate if what you're doing today gets you to where you need to be tomorrow, which sounds very vague, I know, but we get locked into patterns because they're familiar, and it's because what we've always done, but not because they're working well. And what we've always done, we're already starting to see, isn't what we need to be doing right now. Third thing, I guess, reward the behavior you want to see. And this goes for organization and culture in general, not just for the learning organization, but what you reward and what you punish, those messages are received by the organization, and people will adapt their behavior accordingly. If you want people stretching into adjacent domains, encourage it by celebrating it when they do. And again, your teams will quickly learn what's valued and what's not, and what's just lip service, I think. Oh, and one more. Sorry. Cross-skilling isn't really training. It's a resilience strategy. So it's how you make sure that when things change, and they are going to change, that your teams can absorb it and keep on moving instead of breaking. And I guess that's kind of a roll up of all three, I guess.
Thank you so much, Tony and Candace. I think the human element is often so overlooked, but I appreciate you talking about learning and development and gave that perspective to our audience. So thank you so much. Often, when we think about the tools we need to do our job better, we think of computers and software, but there's another side of the house that can be where the most impact is seen. For example, mobility impaired residents rely on government transportation to access basic services. For example, an agency's staff travel to both local and distant venues. To meet such responsibilities, agencies often depend on specialty transportation providers and taxi services, but those options are inefficient, costly, and difficult to manage. My colleague Candace Thorson sat down with Uber for Business's Nick Brown to understand how rideshare apps can make all the difference for agencies. Here's that conversation.
It's interesting because agencies really have more transportation needs than I think a single individual at an agency usually is aware of. Each department has many different use cases, many different applications, from getting employees to point A to point B, to also getting community members who today still face a lot of mobility gaps to access basic services that cities and counties and states stand up. And so there's a mix of products that they use. We see a lot of taxi providers working with agencies. We see a lot of specialty transportation providers also working with agencies. So these are like your wheelchair accessible vehicle type of organizations. as well as rental cars. And so those are probably the big three right now. And each department might have its own contract or its own PO. And so sometimes there's probably opportunity to consolidate. But right now we're seeing them, it's a mixed bag across the board.
A lot of times, like, agencies just keep doing something because that's the way they've always been doing it. And that's not always a great way to do it. So could you talk to me a little bit about what are some of the challenges or drawbacks that the public sector is facing with the status quo of how they're dealing with their transportation needs?
At an agency level, like at a high level, there's two big things. It's cost and time savings. Really, there's probably an over reliance on specialty providers today, where there's a great fit for those in the public ecosystem. But sometimes because that's the only tool in an agency's tool bag, they deploy it a little bit too much in probably cases where there's alternative, more efficient, cheaper options. And then secondly, I think on the time part, a lot of these modes have not updated. I was speaking with an agency the other day who said they still fax trip requests to the provider. And we still
Wow.
talk to agencies that will have to call in a trip, 2 days in advance, and each time they have to book a trip, they have to get on the phone with someone. And then they really lack visibility to whether the trip made it or not. So it's still kind of a fingers crossed, hope you get there solution. And so that's it at the high level. At the biggest pain points I hear from agencies, though, is really kind of that middle level manager role, like the program manager. They're the ones who kind of pay the price with modes that are less efficient, less user friendly, and overall less reliable because they lack visibility. And with those modes, they sometimes also struggle to keep grant compliance, keep their funding in check, especially as tools sometimes when you start spreading them across departments lack like a central repository of like a source of truth of here's where the spend is happening, here's where trips are happening.
We talk about efficiency opportunities, and I think, as consumers, many of us take advantage of a lot of efficient, modern transportation opportunities that the public sector, in so many cases, just does not. So, why often do they not do that? Like, what is holding them back from following the lead in this way of the private sector?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 points to this. Sometimes it's just a lack of awareness of when we talk to agencies. They're kind of like, well, we didn't realize that this was an option for us today. And so that's the biggest one is probably lack of awareness. The second being that they do use it. Actually, we find that that agencies are engaged in more modern, say like rideshare solutions, but it's just ad hoc, and program managers are trying to manage it themselves, and they're kind of lacking the overall framework to standardize the process. The third, if I were to throw in there, is just when an agency does want to adopt more modern solution, it's a lot of work to go out and procure that, up front. Procurement has to lean in. They have to figure out how do we, release a solicitation for this new type of service? Do we have capacity to do this right now? Are we able to do it? Are we able to keep enough steam that it might take for like a 3 to 6 month procurement cycle to get to that end, and still want to deploy the solution? So those are probably the big 3 things.
Thanks so much, Nick and Candace. It's great to see the full landscape of tools at the government employees' disposal. Unfortunately, we are out of time today. I want to thank our wonderful speakers for sharing their insights with us today. Just a few quick reminders before you log off. We do have some great resources available for you to download, so make sure you check those out before you log off. And like I said earlier, we will be sending you a link to the on-demand version of this training, so look for that in your inboxes tomorrow. But on behalf of GovLoop, Pluralsight, Carasoft, Ninja One, and Uber for Business, I hope you enjoyed today's session. And as always, we really appreciate and value the work that you do, so thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us this afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at our next training. Bye!